My name is Preston. I work as a professional life and leadership coach, and today we are going to talk about some of my favorite books. Now, in my coaching, I combine a mix of practical guidance as well as spiritual tools, so you will find that this is kind of all over the place. We have a few different categories, and also my job as a coach is to coach people on who they want to be and where they want to go. So I have to have, you have to have range. So this is going to give you a lot of range. But basically, there are 5 areas that I want to focus this conversation on. So I have some spiritual recommendations of books that you may be interested in. I also have some from a social critic, what's happening on the physical plane perspective. There are some around professionalism, where I think if you read this book, it will completely up your game. I have a few recommendations for the inner work, which I think might be great. And of course, money. Okay, so let's start with inner work, because we all want to break our mindsets, our belief patterns, things like that. Okay, so when I say inner work, because I think sometimes that can be I remember I was talking to a woman one day and I asked her, how does that feel on the inside? And she said, what is the inside? So let's slow down what inner work is. So there are things that happen outside of us, like we get a job, we have a baby, we take a move, whatever. But there's also the feelings that we have around what's happening inside of us. Most of the times, we don't have any awareness of what's happening inside of us, and that's leading to reactivity outward. So if I'm a person who tends to be very fearful, I make up a lot of thoughts about worst case scenarios and what could go wrong, then externally, I will present as hyper-vigilant. I will worry a lot. I will talk about all the ways that I'm afraid. I will pour my fear on other people. I'll be like, be careful this doesn't happen. I will speak negativity into the world, right? We don't live life, we don't see life how it is, we see it how we are. And some of us are walking around with a filter or particular context of life that we don't even know about. For instance, some of us have the context that we need to make right decisions and avoid the wrong decision. Or our context for life might be, I have to protect myself. Because if I create a good mafia, if I have enough money, if I have X, Y, and Z, I'll be safe. And that doesn't get us very far, because safety and security are all inside jobs. I don't have time to go through that, but let me tell you, I've had that realization for myself, and it has completely blown my mind. All right, so let's get started. So that's what the inner work is. All right, so the first book I have is called Nathaniel Branden, A Womans SelfEsteem. I have recommended this book to so many women. It's actually pre-reading for Bold Leadership for Women, which is so, it's kind of, I don't even know how we're going to get a copy of it, because I've run that program so many times and everyone has bought the book that it's hard to find the book. But I have like 4 copies of it myself. Anyway, this book is a great book if you are a woman who really wants to start to examine her own inner life and the decisions that she makes and why she makes the decisions that she does. Especially if you're a working professional, it has an entire chapter on self-acceptance, on integrity, on responsibility, of fear of success, and he also includes STEM sentences. So for instance, a lot of women, well, not just women, but a lot of people in general run this idea of I don't want to disappoint. A lot of leaders withhold sharing information or telling people how they're struggling because, one, they're human and they want to be liked. So when we're running a form of I want to be liked, I don't want to disappoint people, we aren't in service. We're standing in a place of, it's too much focus on what people are thinking and saying about us and how we're occurring to them, as opposed to a lot more focus on serving, giving people what they need, not what they want, shooting straight, being candid, and getting the job done. This book will help you clean all that up. And yes, before you even say anything, I recognize that it is a book written by a man about women. However, this guy is a psychoanalyst. He's been a psychiatrist. He has over 25 years of experience. And quite frankly, I like going where the learning is. And I think there is just so much learning in this book. And I especially like the STEM sentence, the completion sentences. And I do that with my clients all the time. If I disappoint somebody, then X, Y, and Z, and you have someone write it out 10 times, it will start to unearth so many limiting thoughts that you didn't even know you had. So this will be my recommendation. Nathaniel Branden, A Woman's SelfEsteem. My next book, if you really want to start to get an understanding of how you come across to other people, I am a big proponent of the Enneagram. I love the Enneagram. I use it in my practice. It has helped me so much in my own personal life. And I'm a type 7. And you know, all the things that come with being a 7, yes, it's great. Yes, it's wonderful. And I also noticed I had judgments around being sad. This book, Personality Types by Riso and Hudson, if you want a book that is just gonna read you to filth, when you read it and you're like, this is my personality, oh my God, I can't stand it, like, it's just great. And I think it just reads you to filth in such the best way, because when I was reading that chapter, I walked away feeling so good about myself. It's like a very 7 answer. I felt so good about myself, but I also see this as so much learning and growth and opportunity. So if you aren't familiar with the Enneagram is a personality typing system or tool. Basically, it asserts that there are 9 core personality types, and it is what is your focus of awareness? When you walk into the room, what do you focus on? For some people, they focus on harmony. They want people to feel comfortable and be safe, right? And they're very porous. These are type 9s. They're very porous. So they tend to enmesh. They take on the feelings of other people. These are people who are very intuitive, who have a lot of grounding energy, a lot of let's slow it down energy, right? The downside is that they can come across stubborn. They can procrastinate because their awareness goes out. It disperses into the environment. So they have a hard time stopping and starting. They tend to procrastinate. They are very clear on what other people want and what their agendas are, but not so clear on their own. So, for instance, my dad's a type 9, and I told him about this book, and he told me that he has been every day for the 20 minutes a day listening to this book, and he's just having his own realizations. So if you want kind of a crash course in the Enneagram and the types and understanding your types and your own behavior patterns and ways that you can really start to work it, get this book, Personality Types by Riso and Hudson. Okay, this next book is for niche individuals who are men who tend to suffer from nice guy syndrome, as in not wanting to fully stand in your power. You find yourself pleasing people, you have a hard time saying no. And some people could think like, do men do this? Yes, they do this. It's a lot of men who do this. There's no shame in it. I have clients that do it. And there's a lot of men who lead from their heart, and they don't really know how to manage all the emotions that come with being a very heart-centered person. Because if we are like that, we want to be people who have very strong boundaries. The people who have the biggest hearts also have the strongest boundaries. We can slow that down later, but it's true. You know, it just is, because when they give, they are very clear on what the give is. They're clear on how much they can contribute. And even though they're up to being of service in the world and the greatest good, they also include themselves in that greater good. That's the main point. Anyway, this book is by Dr. Robert Glover, and it's called No More Mr. Nice Guy. I recommend it. So if you are an Enneagram 2 and you're a guy, this is the book for you. This. You don't need any other book. Maybe you need the Riso and Hudson book, but this book is the book. So I recommended this to 2 of my male clients, and they were both 2s. And sometimes my clients will do trios, and one of them got on the call, and he was like, Tarita, I didn't like this book at all. I hated reading every part of it. It made me feel so slimy and so uncomfortable. And you know why? Because I do this stuff. It was like a light bulb just went off in his head. So if you are a guy who struggles with kind of saying no, with pleasing, with not taking a stand, listen, just get the book, live your best life. I promise you it's just a game changer. All right, so those were my recommendations for books that have to do with the inner work. Next area we're going to go to is let's do professionalism. So I think there are a lot of books that you can read that will help you in business, that will help you from your career perspective, and a lot of them focus on strategy. So I'm not like a marketer, I'm not a business expert. I mean, I'm not a strategist, so I can't really speak to that, but I can tell you all the things you need to do to be charismatic and to really carry your vision to life. So the first book that I would recommend, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you have a business, is Turning Pro by Steven Pressfield. It's called Tap Your Inner Power and Create Your Life's Work. This book it's a game changer. So in 2019, I read this book, and I really think 2019 was a year that I turned pro in my business. And it is because I read this book by Steven Pressfield. And I just want to read one point that he makes in this book. Basically, he was working on writing, and for 1 year, he decided that I'm committing to writing. So he would wake up, he would go walk by the river, and then he would sit down and he would write it. And eventually he finished his book. And his point is that when he stopped having resistance, because this book really talks about all the resistance you have around taking action. When he stopped having resistance, he finished the book and he came into cooperation with everything that was happening. So he wrote, "That year made me a pro. It gave me, for the first time in my life, an uninterrupted stretch of month after month that was mine alone, that nobody knew about me, when I was truly productive, truly facing my demons, and truly working on my shit. That year has stuck with me." And this book stuck with me because when I read that he did this, that's exactly what I did. And I think that especially if you're an entrepreneur, you need to have that phase in your business where you are just completely heads down. You aren't popping up every 5 minutes trying to check for progress, right? Like, you aren't tied to a particular outcome. You're just going for it, and it's just heads down about the work. This is that book. Yes, he also wrote The Art of War, or The War of Art, which I haven't read, but I've heard really great reviews about. Okay, the next book that we actually do a process in bold leadership for women, and when the world opens up again, I really want to go to one of her seminars, is More Time to Think by Nancy Klein. So the premise of this book is that, especially in organizations, there's this idea of a thinking hierarchy, and that people who have bigger jobs are smarter, better, know more, et cetera, and that people who might have lower jobs are not, their thinking is not equal. This book purports that your business, the culture of your business grows when we start seeing everyone as thinking equals, because the brain that came up with the problem more than likely can come up with the solution. So she starts really slowing down, how do you listen, and how do you as another person trigger thinking in other people. And it has nothing to do with what you say, but it directly has to do with how you treat people when they're thinking. And most of the times we treat people, we cut them off. We think that what we have to say is more important, and it really makes you question, how do I know that what is coming out of my mouth is more important than that next person's thought? So she has this process of a thinking partnership where basically you set up an hour with someone and each person gets 30 minutes, and you have to answer 2 questions that are worded very particularly. The question is, what do you want to think about, and what are your thoughts? And then the person starts talking, and during that time you just watch them, because we are the batteries, we are the generators for thinking, and most of the times we don't give people space to think. We cut them off, and when you're listening to someone, you want total focus on them. So they talk, they process, they do whatever they have to do, and then when they think that they're done, you ask them, what more do you think, feel, or want to say? Game changer. Game changer. Start doing this for people at work, because in reality, people are living in this story of, I have to do this, I have to do more, I have to blah. This book is pretty much telling you, you don't need to do anything, you need to be. You can be a soft space to land for people to think more freely, to have more clarity, to have more creativity and innovation in their thinking. And as leaders, we need time to think strategically. Thinking does not happen when we are on our cell phones or looking at our inbox or rushing so fast. It just does not occur like that. We really have to slow down. We need time for reflection. We need time for silence. Cal Newport puts it as, you need time where you don't have anybody else's input of your own. And that's pretty much what the whole process is really pointing you to. How do you ignite your own thinking? Because we live in a think for society. What do you think? Can you give me advice? I don't know. So many people look for these answers outside of themselves when it's really inside of you. All right, so this is my professional self. Entrepreneurs, you need to get turning pro. Everybody, you need to get more time to think. Start asking your direct reports. What do you think, feel, or want to say about that? Let's just put some time on a calendar. Run the experiment. I guarantee you, I put my money on it. Change. Okay. Let's do money. So, this book is by Barbara Stanny. It's called Overcoming Under-Earning. And I love this book because, so listen, I think if you're looking for a book that's gonna, like an introduction to finances or how do I budget, Womans SelfEsteem, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I love that book. And I think the girl's name is Tiffany, somebody from Budgetnista. That's a great book too. Those are the books that I think are, if you want a practical how-to guide, go for it. I honestly don't even mind David Ramsey because I've done his course before, but I also think that David Ramsey is he feels very judgy to me. My experience of him is he's very judgy. He has some very strong political and ideological views that are steeped in suffering. And I just don't think that we have to punish ourselves in order to reach a financial goal. That's my point of view on it, but let's not get on a tangent. Anyway. This book by Barbara Stanny is called Overcoming Under-Earning. And the premise is that you can be an under-earner, a chronic under-earner, even if you make a lot of money, because it's a experience inside of you. What I really enjoy about this book is that it does all the inner work around money, because all of us have a money story. All of us project all of our stuff on money. We make money mean so many things, and that projection operates in places that are just so insidious that you don't even want to know about it. So, and it's happening all the time. So if you grew up in a place where, if you grew up in an environment where you didn't think there was enough money, or your parents were not on the same page about money, that chaos, that confusion, that not knowing, where we stand, or having to please both parents, that back and forth, that lives inside of you too, which causes apprehension around money. So what I love about this book is that she gives you exercises to dig down into your own money issues. So for instance, you would have to complete these sentences. My biggest fear around money is, my father felt money was, my mother felt money was, in my family money caused, my early experience with money was, money equals such and such. Like I bought this book and it had answers written in it, and one person wrote money equals poor, right? Like, wow, parents told me money was bad, right? And that people who had a lot of money are self-assured and spoiled. So whoever wrote this, one, thank you for sharing, and I really hope that you worked your process, because we don't want to be walking around thinking that people with money are selfish and spoiled, especially if we want money. So get this book, clean up your money story, and then go out and get the bag. Right. And then my second book around money is Steve Chandler, How to Be a Wealth Warrior. I think if you want something that's just, I love the way Steve Chandler writes, because he writes from a place of just lots of essays and kind of musings and rants on particular topics. And if you want a very kind of clear-cut, black and white, here's what's going on with you and money, you want to reframe, you want to shift, you want to focus, this book, Wealth Warrior, is it. And I'm thinking one of the things here, I remember him talking about how he was like, if you want to paint a wall, you just look around your apartment and say, okay, how many paint cans do I need? And then you go out and get the paint. But if you want to get money, we automatically think, oh my God, like what's going to happen? Where's the money come from? No, you just go out and get the money, right? Like, just go out and get the money. Apply for a job, make more, work your money process. It's just, you can do so many things to really start to create more abundance in your life. My only encouragement is that you do it on multiple levels. So you do it mentally, maybe you do some affirmations. You do it physically, maybe you start to actually budget. We don't want to be people who are just law of attracting everything and money. I mean, that's clubhouse shit. Like, that's not real. So don't even get me started on that. But don't just think like I just get to attract the money I want, it's gonna come. No, it doesn't work like that. Pray to Jesus and row to shore. So we can't attract millions if we don't even know what to do with the $50 we have now. We need a balance. So let's make sure that as we're growing ourselves, we have a balance. So you can get on the physical level, you can get on the emotional level, right? Work all the hurt that you had around money, what happened to you when you had money. I remember I had a piggy bank once and it got broken into, and it was shattering for me, and I think I might have been like 8. That made me have some ideas around money and what do you do with it and how do you keep it, or how do you hold on to it. So I think we've all had some trauma around money, and we really want to start healing that, because just with any trauma, if we don't work our process, it will start to pop up in areas that you don't want it to. And we want to be healthy individuals who take good care of ourselves. So be sure to do that. Okay, my last 2 sections are on social critique and spiritualism. So let's start with spiritualism. So one of my really good friends, Lisa, got me into pranic healing. If you don't know what pranic healing is, prana is energy. If you go in a good way to start to see it is that if you're outside on a sunny day and you kind of hold your hands up to the sky like this, like intertwined, and you look upwards at the sky where the sun is, obviously. But if you look upwards, you'll start to see rays, right? It's like prana's energy. It's all around us, things like that. Everything's energy. Your energy, we're all in an energetic field, and we're all just coming into cooperation with that. Most people don't even really understand what it means. Anyway, your body's energy. And just like with energy and emotions, it can get stuck. So when you're having, when we have feelings that we don't process, it stores into our body. It's just like if you walked into someone's apartment and they just had an argument, you would feel that coming in, like, oh, something just happened, what's wrong? All of that is energy. The point is that you want to start to clean your energy. You want to start to maintain that perspective too, because before we have a symptom in our body, there's already energy around it. So there's genetics, there's all this other stuff happening, but there's also this new understanding of advanced energy anatomy, which we will get to because that is a great book. Anyway, so this book by Master Chokkuk, he was a spiritual teacher, he is a pranic healer, and he pretty much started pranic healing. And pranic healing is when you start to energetically cleanse yourself. So before calls and after calls, when I talk to my clients, I don't want to have energetic cords where I'm still tied to them. So I will have a salt water bowl. I will imagine white light around me. I'll clean my energy. Especially for women, we tend to trap a lot of energy underneath our arms, in our solar plexus, where we store a lot of stress. So I always want to clean those areas and dump it into a salt bowl, just because I want my vessel, my body, to be clean and pure. And I want to protect myself when I go out. So I may energetically feel into a particular situation. I know they say we have 5 senses, but I tend to think we have more, and that's a conversation for another day, but that's the game I'm in. So this book gives you an introduction to pranic healing. I took a class in Miami. It was great. I learned how to clean my energy. I learned about the chakras. That's really important because if you have stagnant energy, it impacts your chakra system too. So for instance, if you have something going on with your navel chakra or second chakra, that's all related to finances, sex, and relationships. So if this is cluttered, you will see that out into the world. For some women, we just want to clean your chakras so that the energy can move freely in your body. If you want to learn some more about it, Miracles Through Pranic Healing, it's a book. Clean your energy, sage your place, do your crystals, all that stuff. I'm here for the girls. Okay, the next book, which I actually don't have because I listened to it on Audible, is by Carolyn Myss. I have another book by her, so I'll show you the name then. and it's called Advanced Energy Anatomy System. So where this one is talking about advanced energy anatomy, prana, energy, and chakras, she's talking about the same thing, except she's specifically looking at it from your chakra and archetypes. So Carolyn Myss is a medical intuitive. She's been in that field for, I think, over 30 years. And if you don't know what a medical intuitive is someone who can read your energy, look at where energy is from a chakra perspective, and start to see what's draining you. So without going into too much, because it's a lot, I'll give you kind of a quick and dirty version. Basically, the only way that we know time is through our physicality, but we don't know time in any other aspect. So it's like if you think about yesterday, the only reason you know it was yesterday is because you thought about it, right? A lot of us have a hard time staying in the present moment. We are either putting our energy in the past, reminiscing, dreaming, maybe we even feel resentful about a particular situation that happened, or we're putting our energy in the future. We're anticipating, we are looking forward to. Whatever we're doing, we aren't here now. Now, when that occurs, all of your energy is not present, which prevents you from creating the ways that you want to. Some people actually, it's anchors. So for example, maybe you had a very bad breakup. Maybe you had a large trauma. There are still energetic ties to that time of your life, that experience that impacts your biology. And the more that you give energy, the more that you give thought, the more that you hang on to those feelings of hurt and resentment, it causes illness in your body too. So if you are a person who tends to have over responsibility, if you engage in controlling and manipulative behavior, all that stuff hits your lower back. It's responsibility, right? It's kind of similar. So what medical intuitives do is they can look at your energy, the energy of your history of your family, and say, oh, okay, well, when X, Y, and Z happened, it tells you what were the reasons behind, in some cases, of why things occurred, right? I'm into it. You don't have to be. Also, this is not a spite against like medical professions. We need all of it. So yes. Anyway, that book pretty much talks about how there are 4 core archetypes in every individual, and the more that we know what our archetypes are, the easier it is for us to manage our life. So everyone has the wounded child archetype. This is where you can see people who show up to work and they are super reactive, or if you think that, if I don't do this, I'm going to get in trouble, or people aren't going to like me, right? That's really our inner child at work. If you're a person who really needs to prove themselves, who needs people to see in a certain way, you probably got humiliated when you were little and you're living that out. So we all have a wounded child. We all have a prostitute archetype. That just means, very plainly, can you be bought? What's your price? Now, most people think that when they think prostitute, they think of women and men relationships. Not true. Carolyn says that 80% of relationships are some kind of exchange where it doesn't just look like a woman dating a rich guy. It could be something along the lines of, I have a lot of creative energy, but inside of me, I feel like I'm not confident. I feel like I can't run the business part of it. So I am going to give you my creative energy if you run the business and protect me from that, right? That's an exchange. There's just so many things. There are a lot of women who take on roles of saving men, right? That's an exchange. Stay with me, take care of me, love me, and in exchange, I'll do X, Y, and Z. It's so insidious that you really have to look at it. Because it operated in my life, it was operating in my friend's life. Like, listen, consciousness is all about the work. And sometimes we see things that we don't want to see. Okay. Advanced Energy Anatomy, Carolyn Myss is the book. Oh my God, you will read the book and it's going to blow your mind. Oh, the last 2 archetypes were wounded child, prostitute. Gosh, I can't even remember now. Your saboteur. Yes, your saboteur. It's the part of you that sabotages yourself, right? When you want to take that promotion, you don't take it. When you want to do something different, you talk yourself out of it. And I'm having a complete mind fart on what the last archetype was. But the point is, I've listened to that book so many times, and it's one of those things where I actually have to go to sleep after I've listened to it because I just feel like I'm changing so much on the inside that I can't even manage what's happening inside of me. All right, Advanced Energy Anatomy. Her second book, which I personally like to read in the morning, is called Intimate Conversations with the Divine, Prayer, Guidance, and Grace. Interesting thing about Carolyn Myss, she actually grew up as, she was not raised, but she went to a lot of, she basically was educated by nuns. So she has a very interesting relationship with the divine. I don't think she would describe herself as religious. She says religion is just kind of a costume party. If you're with it, you're with it. If not, totally okay. But I really enjoy her prayers, and I like reading them in the morning. I think it makes me feel more grounded. One of the things that I find myself saying so much is, bless this journey that is my life. And even with my clients, I always want them to see the miracle that they have of being alive. And we don't really have any issues. It's the thinking that we have around our issues. And sometimes we get caught up in our own suffering that we don't even look at all the joy that we do have, right? We try to create from a place of fear versus creating from a place of upliftment and joy. So this book always puts me in a really good mood. All right, last session, social critique. So my first book is Conversations with RBG by Jeffrey Rosen. Now, Jeffrey Rosen was the president of the National Constitution Center, and at one point in time, he used to work for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So they had a long-lasting friendship where they would write letters back and forth to each other. And he pretty much talks, and he's interviewing her, and he's talking to her about, how has she created her career? What were some of the lessons she's learned throughout her life? And to me, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is such the epitome of integrity and forward progress. And it's interesting to note that she got most of her strategy for how to uplift women's rights through the courts through Thurgood Marshall. So she's very big on not just having radical change, that especially from a court population, you have to start to make incremental change. So during that time, this idea of women's rights wasn't a thing. I mean, now it's very common, but they were just learning about it, and she was one of the women who was trying to convince them that this was a thing. So instead of advocating for the rights of women, what she in turn did was she started talking about how the system was meant to, the system was created to support particular people, but it's actually not supporting them, it's actually hindering them, and she used men to do it. So an example was that there was a widow's clause where in the Army, if your partner passed away, you would get a payout, right? So a lot of the wives were married to men, and if they passed away, they got a widow's stipend or a widow's pension. Well, apparently there was a woman who passed away, and the husband wasn't eligible for a widow's pension because widows were only women. She brought that case, and he ended up winning. And it was just a myriad of other things. But one thing I really enjoyed about the book was, at one point in time, she was supposed to be interviewed by the New York Times magazine, and she had just gotten into this role. So I think that, I can't remember when she was nominated for the Supreme Court. But the point is, 3 years into the job, they wanted to interview her for New York Times magazine. And she wrote them back saying, I am only 3 years into this wonderful career. Why don't you come back in another 7 years, and by then I would have really done something. And I just find that so fascinating because, listen, I know what I would have did. I would have been like, hell yeah, put me on the New York Times magazine. Tell me how, you know what I mean? And it's just, she had none of that because she was about the work. And she was also like, let me tell you, you ain't seen nothing yet. Give me a few more years. I'm really about to do something. Girl, just God bless Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Okay. My next book is by Isabel Wilkerson, and it's called Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent. This book it's just so great. It's just so great. It talks about how we have so many hierarchy and divisions in America, and how that actually starts to perpetuate hate and discrimination in other areas of the world. How basically the Germans, when they were going through the Holocaust and Hitler, they were looking at our history to create their playbook. And at some point in time, they even said, hey, let's not go too far. We don't want to be just like the Americans. So if you're a person, or if you know someone and you really want to start to understand white privilege, you really want to look at it from a historical perspective, because I think that we tend to have this argument of, oh, that was just so long ago, it didn't occur. Not true. And I think a lot of people of color were mostly pissed off because all of us felt like this, but some of the white people were just kind of like, oh my God, it's a thing. Yes, it's a thing. It is a thing. And it's not just a thing, it's actually the whole environment that you live in. It's a concept that we just all have collectively agreed upon, and now we're dismantling that construct. This book helps you really start to understand the profound impact of that. And I think it's just such a great book around just black excellence, black perseverance, black resilience, all of those things. So Isabel Wilkerson, Cass, The Origins of Our Discontent, wonderful to look through, especially to help explain where we are now and how we got here and how does that continue to perpetuate. Lastly, I was gifted this book by a friend, and it's called The World Outside Your Head, The World Beyond Your Head, on Becoming an Individual in an Age of Distraction by Matthew B. Crawford. Now, this book is kind of old, but it was just so, for some reason, the word that comes to mind is messy. Like, I had this filter of what I thought the world was. Now, granted, listen, this is something I'm living in every day. But this book really talks about societal constructs that we live in that we don't really question, and how that starts to impact us from a technological perspective. What's it doing to our mind? What's it doing to our social interactions? What's it doing to society at large? And this was really interesting because it talked about, like, one example that he gave was that most of the people who go gambling in Las Vegas aren't people who travel from outside of Vegas. They're all locals. Like 70% of people who gamble in Las Vegas are locals. And so now they're using gaming technology to start to craft machines that really take your attention. So when you walk through the casinos, they're calling your name. Like, the machines have facial recognition, and when you walk, they're like, hey Tarita, hey Tarita. It's just like, are you kidding? First of all, what is going on there? Secondly, people start to get addicted to these things, and they looked at people who had heart attacks or strokes in casinos, and how long would it take for someone to get help? And they started realizing that people were dying in casinos because they had a stroke or they had a heart attack. One, because they were sitting there so long that they were getting blood clots. And two, people who were playing the games wouldn't move out the way for the ambulance to come. So if I'm playing a slot machine and someone in front of me passes away and the ambulance or the paramedics are coming from behind me, I'm so in this game that I'm less inclined to move to help them save another human being. And how there's just bureaus of organizations who want to create longer screen time. It's just such it's a social critique on how we view marketing, how we view our awareness. Like, when you go through the airport, someone decided that in the TSA bins there should be advertisements. Why is that a thing? Like, we don't have a do not approach or do not solicit for our consciousness. We're open to so many things, and we're open to so many advertisements, and all those things are putting hooks in us. Which, back to the energy part, you want to make sure that you're cleaning your energy. So this book was just, in some cases, it was even gross. Like, they would talk about how in the casinos, one woman said that she wore black so that when she peed on herself, people wouldn't notice. And we have so many organizations who profit off of our awareness. So, even like, what happens when you're out walking on your cell phone and other people are walking on their cell phones? What does that do to your experience of the space? It's a lot of questions that I never really thought about before. So that's the book. It's called The World Beyond Your Head by Matthew Crawford. All right, friends, I'm going to wrap this up because this is a super long video, but I hope that was helpful. And if you have some books that you want to recommend to me, let me know, and I'll talk to you later.